Happy today. I am William Brown from IamWilliamBrown.com. This is Disconnect to Connect One Word Conversations. One Word Conversations is a self-discovery, relationship building conversation designed to invite you to look at your language. Many times we can come up with all the wonderful words that we can think of and still find ourselves in a place of disconnection. Because words don't just come with definitions, they come with emotions and stories and expectations. And so sometimes we feel that we are having a conversation, but we are really not. The more that you are willing to have a one word conversation, I believe you'll learn more about yourself, the person you're speaking with, and you might even be able to build on your relationship. One More Conversation is brought to you by IamWilliamBrown.com, a place to help you live your life and be yourself. One way I spotlight what is available at IamWilliamBrown.com is our U cards. Our U cards are a part of the Beyond the Shell series. It is a couple of children's books, one called Finding You Beyond What Protects You. The other is The Journey to Stay You, and there's also a journal. The cards are intention setting cards, and a game and a journal prompt. So the cards that I picked for today are I am curious, you are enough, and there is no one youer than you. So with that in mind, I will introduce the time where you can like, share, ask questions, comments, do what you can to let me know that you are also a part of this conversation. So the word today is flow. So it's kind of interesting because I really been working on embracing this and really understanding the power of this word. And I think sometimes for me, I get confused with a lot of things. So as I do, I invite a guest in so we can have a conversation. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody, and good morning, Bill, or Will, as we know you.
Yeah, all of those things. This is the moment where I invite you to introduce yourself however it feels comfortable to you.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I am Adriana Vermillion, and first, I always share with the world that I'm a mom. I'm a mom of two, and then I'm a professional. I have been a business owner since I was very little, and today I own two businesses, which I'm very proud of. My very first one, I'm known as the Potty Whisperer, where I have the opportunity to work with children and their families in the world of potty training, which is giving me quite a bit of flow and leads me into, no pun intended, and leads me into my second business, which is a personal and business life strategist. And the company name is called 360 Theory, a theory that was born from the Potty Whisperers business, where families would hire me to do potty training and help them with that world of theirs, only to realize that the child can very easily potty train. However, there's some personal life strategies that the family needs to work on before we can actually do potty training. And then I'm also call myself free spirit, I believe most of the time. And I love to camp and hike and see nature, which brings me to this wonderful word that you are sharing with me, flow.
Oh, wonderful. I think all of those things are coming up. I'm getting a lot of questions came up with your introduction.
Excellent.
So how does the word flow land for you?
The word flow, I seriously see this wonderful, beautiful, majestic bird
Hmm.
flying, migrating from one part of the world to the next. And she flows until she lands where she ought to.
Hmm. Wow. I never really thought of that as a bird, and I totally get it. It's like for me, flow is just this effortlessness, this kind of gliding, this kind of more of the air than any what I am doing, what effort I am taking within it. And sometimes, within my life of doing, right? So we get so caught up with doing stuff. And it's like when you're
Yes.
talking about, potty training. Yeah, it's like as a parent, it's like, we have to get this child potty trained. And it's like, dude, we're going to figure this out, right? This is, you're not going to be 50 and still worried about being potty trained, right? So,
Some
but,
are.
right. But there is this, letting go and allowing. What just came up for me is, the Toy Story with Buzz Lightyear. It's like,
Hmm.
I'm not flying, I'm gracefully falling, right? It's
Yes.
like there is this, just accept, um, the reality of life and everything within it, and you can move, through that.
That's right. You mentioned something effortless. You see, in my description of this beautiful bird, as she flows, she does migrate, which means she does go through possibly harsh weather,
Hmm.
some days of longer flights and some shorter.
Hmm.
However, she flows and she knows one thing: she has a destination.
Hmm.
So,
Wow.
flowing, it's not necessarily effortless. What it is, it's worry less,
Hmm.
I would say.
Got it. Yeah. I can add that on to, my understanding, because there is, look, within my effort, right? There
Hmm.
is, for me, worry shows up, that if am I able to complete this, right? Am I able
Yes.
to do this? And so you take the worry out of that, and then you're just flowing. There is this faith, there is this, um, knowing that it's going to work out. I mean, it's like, our birds, thinking about, um, migrating, or do they just migrate? Right? It's like a plan. But it's like, hey, it's like, we're going to Florida. It's around that time. We need to kind of get our flight scheduled together. Hey, anybody check the weather app? All that kind of stuff that we do. That
Hmm.
it's just a part of nature that just happens.
That's right. I recently read a study about birds, and somehow we got on the topic of birds here
Hmm.
effortlessly. I read a study on how birds have this innate agenda, and they know when things need to happen. They know their destination, and quite impressively, they leave a certain location, they go to a certain location, and they come back to that same location.
Wow. Hmm.
And the flow in that is, I believe, so impressive to me because knowing where you're coming from and where you're going and whether you need to come back to that same location is so inspiring to me, knowing that whatever is, whatever will be,
Hmm.
and we only have this very moment right now.
Right. That's, I'll put that in my category of simple but not easy, right?
Okay.
And it's because really, it's like I have an awareness or a knowing of that whatever will be, right? And that it's in some cases that um it is already done, right? you
Yes.
know
Yes.
and but I still feel that I'm like conditioned to like worry about it being done, right? Or if it can get done, but at the same time understand that it's done already. It's um it feels like for me that in the concept of be do have, I don't know if you're familiar with
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yes.
A lot of my conversation about awareness is the be part. The more that we recognize or understand who we be, then there is a doing to our being, so it's
Mm-hmm.
connected to how we are, so we there is a connection to what we have. And so I believe that in order for me to really embrace the be do have, I have to like disconnect from the matrix of do, right? Because when I do before I be, um, I'm not in flow. I'm just doing things. I'm fighting things. I'm resisting things. I'm plotting and planning that has no connection to the flow of my life. And so it is, sometimes it's a very um, difficult, or not easy thing to do because of my conditioning. Let's just speak for myself.
Wow, a lot came up for me as you shared all of that. You see, flow is easy. What's rather an issue with flow is the matrix, like you said, is
Mm,
what surrounds us and what we are willing to accept, what we are willing to carry on with,
mhm.
and what we are willing to give of ourselves to host that much blockage, I would say, to our
Mm,
flow
right,
of life, flow of spirit, flow of abundance, any form of flow.
right.
And so for me, I had the word flow back in 2016. And I was so challenged with that word because a major event happened in my life
Mhm,
the year before, and then the year before that year.
mhm,
And I came to a place where I said, I am so glad this happened in 2014. I'm so beyond amazed that this other miracle happened in
right,
2015. Yet, healing from whatever happened in 2014 took me time because I
right,
take time to heal.
right.
And then in 2016, I went on a spiritual mindfulness retreat, and I was thinking, New Year, new me. But then I'm like, no, it's New Year's, same me,
Hmm. Wow.
yet a different flow. And that
Hmm.
was it. That was flow.
Right.
So
Wow.
I've allowed that word to bring anything abundantly in my life, from
Hmm.
financial to love to relationship, anything that flooded my life, it was welcomed. It was
Right.
welcomed with this open heart, open spirit, open anything that was Adriana then. Yet I had yet to learn
Hmm.
where this bird was flowing towards. I did not
Right.
have a destination. I just knew that I wanted to be in the moment and I wanted to feel what it's like to not resist, to not control, to just be.
Right.
Well, almost 5 years later, almost, I'm almost there. It will be
Yeah.
5 years. The word is coming back. But in between that flow and this flow, I have learned gratefully so many beautiful lessons
Hmm.
that I believe this flow is going to be a lot slower, a
Hmm.
lot more wiser.
Hmm.
I know exactly where my other side of the country of flow, where I'm
Right.
migrating. And I
Right.
also know that if I ever have to come back, if I make this trip back to my original departure, coming back to the example of a bird flowing, right?
Right. Right.
I know exactly where I'm starting. And if
Right.
I ever have to come back or will make it back on my journey back, I know I will do it with gracefulness and beauty and hope.
Right. Wow. No, I say within my self-discovery journey, right? The self-awareness, self-discovery journey,
Yes.
it's like we are alone with others, right? So it is something that the more that we embrace that this is our journey, um, that when you were sharing that, I was thinking that flow, even though that there's a flow to life, big life, you want to think of the universe and how the circle of life when with Lion King, and that there's things that happen. There's such a personalness of flow.
Yes,
There's
there is.
right, and it's like um, and I have been embracing, even though it's sometimes it's very difficult, is that when I am myself, when I am true to myself and being myself, I can't get that wrong, right? And it feels like, for me, it's like, oh, I'm doing it wrong. It's like, how can you be yourself wrong, right?
Hmm.
But there's that feeling of that, and the more that I embrace that, there is an individual, personal flow of my life, and sometimes it has nothing and everything to do with other people's lives. Um, then that's the power. Before you were before you shared that, I was thinking of the speed of flow, right?
Hmm.
And
Yes.
being and I was thinking that, okay, there are some times where I felt that I was moving a lot slower, right, than I wanted to or needed to, and everything. And the first question that I was thinking is like, do I have too much baggage? Is
Mm.
this is there is there something slowing down my flow, that is causing this? And the more that I listen to your sharing, it's like, maybe the answer is yes, and maybe it's no. Maybe it's just wisdom.
Right.
Maybe because you have went through some stuff and realized some things, that what, this part of flow is slow and deliberate, and and you take the time. And there's going to be some times where it's like haul ass, right? And it just kind of take, and just kind of, it's like you can't, it's like light speed. But and you'll be able to see everything that you need to see, deal with everything that you need to do in that faster pace. But it's up to you. And it was, like I said, it was very interesting before that I was so conditioned, or my default was that if I'm going slow, it's because that there's a problem. There is something holding me back from it. But really, I don't think that that's the case from what you were sharing.
Oh, definitely not. And I've studied. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Lao Tzu.
Mm-mm.
Okay. I study different religions, and I do consider myself a Christian because I believe in Jesus Christ.
Right,
However, at the heart of it all, I think I'm a spiritual being having this beautiful, sometimes complicated human experience. So
right,
Lao Tzu is a teacher in the Chinese studies.
right.
And the quote that inspired flow back in 2016, if I may read it to you, is
Absolutely.
it says, "Life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. Don't resist them. That only creates sorrow. Let reality be reality. Let things flow naturally forward in whatever way they like."
Hmm.
I am telling you, when I decided to go with the flow
Hmm.
back in 2016, I had no idea what my world
Hmm.
would be like
Right.
all the way through 2021. However, I've experienced the most amazing things, feelings, and journey, and I am back in flow, which is
Hmm.
what my theory that I've developed at 360 Theory is. In order to truly be inspired by your own life,
Right.
we often go to other people to be inspired by their own life, their own
Right.
examples. But in order to really be inspired by your own life, you do have to make a 360 turn.
Hmm.
Come back to the beginning of that cycle. We often take a 180 and we
Right.
come to reality, as some people put it.
Right.
But we really have to make the other 180, because coming back to the beginning gives you a new perspective.
Hmm.
And so today, what I am really inspired by, if I were to share another quote, it says, "Energy flows where intention goes."
Hmm.
And
Got
that
it.
is by Rhonda Byrne, um, which I think you're familiar with.
Yes.
And my intention is to be.
Hmm.
And with the examples and the wisdom that I have gained from my first flow,
Hmm.
I believe I will have a different flow this time around. And one other thing that inspires me quite a bit is a river.
Hmm.
When I was 12, not 12, I was 9.
Hmm.
I, this is rather personal, so the world will know. I found myself at a river beach, and everybody dared everybody to have a uh, nude swimming
Hmm. Okay.
experience. Now, I had a nude, I didn't have the swimming. So I found myself flawed, and I decided not to do it. So then that day, I decided to do something else. I had the intention to learn how to swim. So I went down from that beach to another beach, and I taught myself how to swim that day.
Hmm.
And I taught myself how to swim in a river, which meant I had to go against it in order to truly learn how to use my arms, my legs. And something dawned on me years later. If I taught myself how to swim, or if I took a swimming lesson in a swimming pool, it would have actually been a lot harder, and maybe it would have taken me longer.
Hmm.
However, going against the river, even though I was most likely swimming in place and sometimes flowing with the river, I've learned much quicker, because the
Hmm.
resistance of that river and the flow of that river, it really helped me and supported my intention.
Wow.
The other part of my lesson that I've learned is, every single time that I went to that river, I've noticed something consistent: the rocks.
Hmm.
And one of my teachers said, "What if you just sit by that river and wait for the river to flow, and for the river to finish flowing in order to move those rocks?" And one of our classmates said, "Well, it will take you all day." And it clicked for me. I'm like, the river will never end.
Right.
It will flow. So you better get used to the flow of that river if you really want to move those rocks.
Wow. It's that's amazing because I don't feel like I'm a strong swimmer. One, because of all the lessons that I've been given. And one is, a dear friend threw me in the pool and said, "Hey, let's see if you know." And it was just like, okay, if I survive this, she is going to get it, right? But so I know enough to keep me here. So as you can see that I'm here. I made it back up, but not enough to feel confident that I can like consider myself and take on that label as swimmer. But the more that you were sharing of, um, it wasn't even fighting the river, but just kind of going with it and resisting it, and just kind of seeing what you needed to do to kind of maintain this, um, I guess, control or something, or something to allow you to be in the flow of it, was just amazing. And I'm just going to make, here's the other thing that came up for me. I live in Greenville, South Carolina, and one of um, their spotlights, of the city is that there is a falls in downtown Greenville.
I've been there.
And for me, when I moved here about 5 years ago, it'll be 5 years in June, it was like, that is cool, right? I need, to live in a town that has a waterfall downtown. But as you were talking about, just watching the river, there were more times that when I would go to the falls, that I would watch the falls instead of watching the river. That I was more interested in the power and the noise and everything that was happening at the edge, of, that area and coming over, versus the, dare I say, the beauty of the river moving and flowing and going to that point. I think that's a totally different experience.
It definitely is.
Yeah, and I'm just, I haven't been, downtown, it feels like almost a year because of the pandemic and everything, and just kind of out and about. Most of the times when we're out for something, and get back to the house. But really finding, a moment to just kind of watch the river, not at this, I don't want to say if it's a breaking point, but this kind of, point of fall, but a point of movement, and then settle and movement, and where the movement happens, and where you can see the flow happening, and sometimes you can't see it.
So a few things came up for me. If I would like to, if you will let me
Absolutely.
share. Thank you. First thing that I heard you say was control. How we might need to control or resist this river or this flow or those moments in order to feel something. And
Right.
then I heard you say how much this fall, it truly captures your attention because it's rather magical in the moment, yet it brings you back to thinking how important it is to watch this flow, this river
Right.
accumulating into this drop, into this fall. And so it's not about control, truly, it's about surrender. And surrendering to that resistance with what you know. For example, being in a river and feeling that current, feeling that flow, you surrender to the strength of your feet, if it can hold you still. You surrender to the idea or probability that you will most likely be carried away at some point by the river, or surrender that you may need to hold on to a rock. And so, paralleling that with our life, those rocks are those moments that may make us or bring us to our knees, or bring us tears in our eyes, or they can be stepping stones.
Right.
Allowing to to step on those stones, you also take the risk of slipping on a slippery stone
Right.
and find yourself back in the river.
Right.
Which, surrendering to that current, surrendering to what you know, it will help you to possibly come to another stepping stone or to another moment in life where using the wisdom that you've learned and
Mm.
using the wisdom of the moment can truly bring you to another moment. Because
Right.
as we said in the beginning of your show, we only have this very moment.
Right.
And so resisting or surrendering, it's a decision that you have a split second, if that, to make.
Right.
And deciding whether to go with one or the other, it truly directs the path that you have already decided, technically,
Right. Right.
to be on. But it will decide whether you're taking a detour or if you're going forward. The
Right.
path that you've already decided, the imagine that you've already created in your head, it's
Mm.
there. Your destination's there. And the flow of life is there. Whether you choose to step on a slippery
Right.
stone or whether you choose to hang on to a stone or a
Right.
rock, or whether you choose to cement your feet in the moving sand, technically, in a river.
Right.
It's a choice.
Wow. What's coming up? Thank you for that, because surrender is a part of a number of elements in my life, and it causes a great, let's just say, I don't want to say hardship, but it hardship and freedom, for me,
Hmm.
right? Because of my relationship with surrender. Surrender means, in some cases, I'm giving up, right? But and not as a place of, with power. But the what came up for me is that my resistance to flow really has been about feeling that if I get in the flow, I can end up anywhere. And the way that you're saying, and that the way that I'm getting, or way that I'm hearing this within this conversation, is that you we can decide where we're
Yes.
going and then get in the flow, instead of there is this, um, or find ourselves in the flow because of that decision. I'm still, like I said, this is what I call a download. I'm getting this information. I don't quite understand what I'm saying, but it's coming out of my mouth. So good
You're
luck. Right.
flowing.
Right.
You're flowing.
um.
Okay, so
Yeah.
flow is happening
Right.
from the day that your mother or our parents conceived us.
Right.
The flow of life is there.
Right.
However, we choose to flow and the path that we technically decide to take,
Right.
it's up to us. I was sharing a lecture with one of my clients, and we talked about flow. And again, no pun intended, it was about potty training.
Right.
And the father said, well, Miss A, they call me Miss A, only dead fish flow. So
Hmm.
why should I go with the flow?
Wow.
I said, well, you're right. However, when you don't want to be a dead fish and flow, then you need to create your own flow.
Hmm.
And so surrendering, well, it's about self love
Hmm. Wow.
rather than giving up. Giving up is another perspective, which is associated with winning, desiring, giving yourself that endorphin or whatever hormone you need to feel powerful.
Right.
However, surrendering to the moment, surrendering to flow, surrendering to whatever feels good with integrity,
Right.
it's about self love. It's about
Right.
honoring the one within and giving yourself the opportunity to to go forward rather than taking a detour.
Right.
Because believe it or not, our mind is one powerful thing
Right.
which already has decided where you're going to be a year from now. It's just a matter
Mm.
of us getting in with a program that we have already created.
Right.
So then surrendering to what feels good, that's clothed in integrity and in self-care. You know, your mind, your body, everything within you knows when you give into something that feels good out of true intent or out
Right.
of, I want to say, less than integrity intent.
Right. Let's okay.
Yes.
Yes. It's yeah, I think sometimes, for me, it's like I know, but there are I feel like there are these external pressures to show up a certain way. And even though it may I can justify that it's not out of integrity, right?
Mhm.
But it's in line with, with everyone else is doing it. And I can hear my mom says, if somebody jumps off the bridge, would you do that too? I mean, it's like it's that type of thing. Just because
Mhm.
everybody else is doing it, you have to do it. And so how you can I'm still trying to like wrap my head around, only dead fish flow, right? It's like, I'm just kind of like, wow, that's one way of thinking about it.
Yes.
But there is this point. How can I be myself, right? Because that is, what I invite people to do is to be yourself
Mhm.
and still flow with others. Not we're interdependent, but not dependent on each other, and really be able to embrace that. And I love how you brought in self love. Um, within this conversation of flow, it's just like um, most of the times when um, I don't want to say I find myself in flow, because I think it is something that people acknowledge. There's an external that they will say, "Oh, wow, you're really in the flow right now." And there's
Mhm.
sometimes I'm just kind of something comes to me, and it's just happening, and I just want to just keep it going, or just kind of just stay in that mindset. I will say with this show, like the first show that I did was in April, and after the first show, I said there was a voice that went off in my head that if I don't do this daily, I am not going to be committed to it.
Mhm.
And I was like, I wasn't planning on doing the daily show. I wasn't, it was just, there's a lot of other things that I need to be doing. And I figured out a way that I could do this daily because I wanted to do this. There was this joy, there was this appreciation of having these conversations, even though there's stressors of it and all the other things that come up from doing a daily show like this. But I knew that in order for me to show up as myself, I had to stay in the flow of these type of conversations.
Yes.
And like I said, and sometimes there are rocks, right? Sometimes the conversations are like, what the hell are we, like, what's going on? But it is still, um, I've been able to maneuver myself around some of those rocks
Mhm.
and still kind of stay with it. So I'm really like, I'm really like embracing this and letting this go at the same time, letting go my understanding of flow and embracing an understanding of flow at the same time to really, I guess, get the power of it.
Well, I think that's it. I believe you have made some sort of decision that's pushing you. There's a force that's pushing
Hmm.
you to make that commitment to flow, and I'm saying commitment to flow not as in flowing, but
Right.
as in to the meaning of the word flow
Right.
itself.
Right.
Because going with the flow is truly responding to cues from the universe.
Hmm.
And when you go with it, you are technically surfing
Hmm.
that power, that life force. And it's truly about an awakening,
Hmm.
a wakeful trust, like an awakening to trust and
Right.
total collaboration with what's showing up for you in this very moment.
Right.
And so, trusting you, as Lao Tzu said, with this natural, spontaneous change
Right.
that you have decided and not resisting it, it truly helps you to be who you are
Right.
and who you were and who you ought to be.
Right. Wow.
And
Yeah.
by not rushing anything and by taking it slowly,
Right.
you are actually present with that force. And I see this image of a surfer and how
Hmm.
much he or she loves that wave, that force, that power. And there is danger in it,
Right.
but they don't think about the danger. They're just waiting for that next wave, for that next riding that they can take. And going with that flow, there is no worry really.
Right.
There is this sense of trust. There is this sense of surrender. There's a sense of I am
Right.
whatever
Wow.
that I am is for you in the moment.
Right. Wow. Wow. I think we can talk about this for hours because there's just a flow to it, right? There is just really there's this calmness and this peace and recognizing that for me it is not always going to be that way, but in some cases it is, right? And
Yes,
so,
absolutely.
yeah, is there anything that has come up in this conversation that you want to like leave everybody with, or is there something that you just want to say? Okay, if you didn't hear anything else, I hope you heard this.
Well, yes. One thing that I've learned, at least in the past year of my life, is that going with the flow, forcing absolutely nothing, letting it happen, and trusting that whichever way it goes is for the best, it's been very enamoring to me.
Hmm.
And it helped me to find that serenity that I need if and when a moment of anxiety or a moment of something kicks in and I'm thinking for that 1 second, whatever is, and not controlling it will be.
Right. Oh, wow. Thank you very much. This has been a pleasure. Um, I appreciate you being on the show today. Today, this has been wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's all surrender to the flow, to that self love.
So that's self-love.
Yes,
I would love to say our goodbyes in the green room if you can, but this has been
sure.
great. Okay. Going with the flow. Recognizing how does flow land for you? What are you resisting and what are you allowing or surrendering to? I think the one thing that I'm aware of is it's not just the word flow, but I want to acknowledge the power of the conversation because I think there was a flow to the conversation, for me, right? There was this very heady way. Sometimes I show up in the conversations as, okay, I'm going to have this information that I want to share, right? And we show up to communication, to conversations that way. And then we just allow whatever to show up within that information, our relationship to that information. And I think if we're willing to have conversations where we're not just exchanging information, but we're sharing how we're relating to the information or how the information is landing for us, then we can stay in communication with each other. We can learn something. And I was able to really learn something about myself in the sense that My resistance to flow was more about not having a destination, not having an intention. And the more that you set the intentions and then surrender to the flow, then you'll have the life that you desire. I hope this conversation is beneficial to not just to your day, but to your life. I invite you to reach out to me at iamwilliambrown.com for your complimentary coaching session so I can help you be yourself and live your life. Because the world wants you, the world needs you, but the world isn't waiting for you. So go be you. Have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you next time on One Word Conversations.